It's now August, and we're back in the Clinton River? But why? The whole show was back in May. What could we possibly see here that we didn't see then? As it turns out, just because the shiners and chubs are done doesn't mean that this is now an empty river. There are plenty of new things to discover and explore. But before we do, I would like to check in and visit with some old friends. Speaking of those chubs and shiners, they haven't left, only they've changed appearance and changed location a little bit. No longer are they found in the fast-moving runs, but in the deeper, slower-moving pools. This river has changed with the seasons, and with change brings new faces. One thing definitely hasn't changed, and that's these fish's appetite. You offer them a finger, and they will eagerly come in to have a bite. With my reunion done, let's go looking for new species to film. In hindsight, I probably should have been more careful traveling along the bottom. There are plenty of things in this river that can really ruin your day if you're not paying attention. The two that come to mind are these guys, sculpin and crayfish. The Clinton River is home to this guy, the big water crayfish, the largest of our native species here. These guys can get as big as your hand and pack a mean punch. Thankfully for us, they're generally timid and shy because if fish see them, they'll rip them to pieces. A crayfish that's been spotted by horny-head chubs is in for a bad day. These fish will not let up, and they'll work together as a group to slowly defeat any crayfish they find. Our next threat is more than capable of defending itself with a different method than claws. Armed with dozens of venomous spines on its pectoral and dorsal fins, the sculpin stands impervious to any attack from fish. He certainly looks like an ocean stonefish, don't he? That's because he is. Sculpins lie in wait to swallow smaller fish whole and use their venomous spines to protect themselves from bigger fish. Now we have another bottom dweller, arguably the most important that lives in the river. This is a northern hognose suckerfish. Unlike other suckers, which prefer to swim in a water column, the hognose sucker prefers to lie on the bottom, using the current to pin itself in place. Its broken splot pattern gives it perfect camouflage, allowing it to blend in and go unnoticed. Many of the food items in rivers are inaccessible for most fish, like these shiners and chubs, so they rely on a hognose sucker to dig up small insects so they can eat them. In fact, the easiest way to find hognose suckers is to look for their followers. Our next fish doesn't need the hognose suckers because he himself is a perfectly adapted bottom feeder, and we are talking, of course, about the stone cat. This isn't a catfish that most people think about, but it's extremely important to see them because the stone cat is very sensitive to water pollution. If you're seeing them, that means that you have pristine water. Seeing them can be a little tricky, as they do prefer to hide under rocks and logs. But sometimes you can get lucky and find them out in the open. Last up, for the Clinton River, we have probably one of my favorite fish, darters. There are many species of darters that you can find in just about any river. First up, we have this beautiful greenside darter. Wait, what do you mean wait? You're not ready? Okay, I guess we will. Now that we've found everything in the Clinton River and missed nothing, we're going to go ahead and have a look at a different river. But which one should we pick? I've been asked by many people on this channel to go check out the Huron River, which isn't all that far away from the Clinton River I've been exploring. But with 120 miles of river to choose from, where do I begin? Well, thankfully, a friend told me he had the perfect spot and absolutely insisted I drive out to have a look. Many promises and boasts were made about this spot, and I came in with high expectations. So let's dive in and see if it can meet them. Oh yeah, I'm gonna love it here. This spot on the Huron River truly is something special. It's a real wonder to behold that needs to be experienced to be understood. The first thing that comes to mind is the insane number and diversity of predators here. Just look at them all. Walleye, pike, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, all here in one spot. Speaking of bass, there's an old adage from fishermen that largemouth bass thrive anywhere smallmouth bass are not. This spot disproves that, as you can find both species living together here. The Clinton River North Branch barely had a single bass in the entire stretch. Here on the Huron, there are dozens of bass occupying this very small pool. Patrolling along the rapids is a new species of fish for us. And no, it's not the walleye. It's the other fish hiding in the background, the suckerfish. We have two new species here in the Huron River. First up is this guy, the golden red horse sucker. And after him are these guys, black red horse suckers. I'm gonna be honest with you, these guys were a real pain for me to deal with. As what's the difference between the two? Well, it's very hard to determine. In fact, we'll have to do a close-up examination to find out for ourselves. At a glance, these two species look virtually identical. There's only one reliable way to tell them apart, and that is the number of scales across the midsection of the fish. This is great for people working in a lab, but for divers out in the wild, it's pretty much impossible to determine what you're looking at the moment you're looking at them. Especially when you consider that this is typically the best view you're going to get of them out in the wild. They don't like you approaching closely, and they certainly don't like you sitting there and counting all of their scales. Now that we've dealt with the red horse suckers living at the top of the pool, let's dive down to the very bottom and see what lives down there. This pool is about 18 to 20 feet deep, and so for the first time, I had to bring scuba gear into a river. Here in the Huron River, it's not sculpins or crayfish you have to worry about on the bottom. It's the snapping turtles instead. Thankfully, you leave them alone and they will leave you alone. So there's predators patrolling the very bottom of the pool, predators along the edges. How about in these overhangs? Are you safe here? And the answer is no. These shaded overhangs are the preferred home of the northern pike. And oh boy, this spot is loaded with them. Every spot that had shade had a northern pike hanging out under it, and they were really reluctant to give these spots up. As soon as you flushed them out and they swam away, just a minute or two later, they would be back where you found them. Competition for real estate must be fierce here, because even out in the open, you could find up to 2 or 3 pike in one spot, waiting for the opportunity to hang out in the shade. This spot was truly special for pike. Typically, in an entire dive season, I see 1 or 2 of these guys only for a fleeting moment before they run away, but here, there were as many as 10, and they just kept hanging around and letting me take their pictures. This was a photographer's perfect dream subject. You scared them away and they ran off? Don't worry about it. Just wait, he'll be back in a minute or 2, and you'll have another chance at him. But why? Why is this place so special? With so many predators everywhere, the next question was, what in the world are these guys eating? I don't see anything for them. And that's when I decided to look up in the middle of the pool and found these guys. This, to me, looked like a death wish. How can you sit out in the open with all these predators and not get attacked? The spotfin shiner has an answer, and it's an answer that, quite frankly, infuriates me as a photographer. The spotfin shiner combines its bright and contrasting colors with erratic and chaotic movements to disorientate and confuse would-be predators. Just look at him. He's absolutely gorgeous. But God help you if you want him to stay still for a photo. And to make matters worse, it's never just one you're dealing with. They hang out in groups of about 20 to 40. Imagine you're a pike or a bass trying to line one of these guys up for dinner, and every moment he erratically turns and another one steps in the way. It'd just be impossible to go after these guys. The spotfin shiner has a reason for doing all this flash and show, and that is because these guys are spawning. And unlike rosy-faced shiners or common shiners, they don't use a spawning mound. They just deposit their eggs freely into the water and hope for the best. I've been underwater for 3 hours now, and finally, a new face appears. When people think catfish in the Great Lakes, they probably think of this guy, the channel cat. Channel cat are by far the most common large catfish in the Great Lakes and are frequently targeted by fishermen. It's generally uncommon for scuba divers to see them, and it's very uncommon to see a large catfish that is not roughed up. They seem to live hard and difficult lives, and generally big catfish are loaded with scars, missing whiskers, and sometimes missing eyes. In typical channel cat fashion, this guy wouldn't cooperate with me, and reluctantly, I had to let him go because I was out of air, ending an incredible dive to an incredible diving location. We scuba divers love to name popular dive sites with their own unique nickname. This place is definitely deserving of one. I'm open to ideas, and I might suggest perhaps the Predator Pool or Pike's Pool to start with. One thing is certain, even though we are done today, we will certainly be back another time. There are plenty of other species we did not cover that we're saving for future projects. I fell in love with this place, and I can't wait to come back. It really goes to show you why you need to explore everywhere. There are hidden gems like this all over the place that you'll never know about unless you go and explore. We're back in the Huron once again, dealing with those pesky spotfin shiners. But something's changed about them. Both their colors and their confident, outgoing attitudes are gone. And that's because as the fish change, so do the seasons. It's now September, and the diving season is rapidly winding down. Every dive in September is precious because it very well could be the last dive of the season. But for me, there was one thing I felt I needed to do before I could wrap the year up. We need to take everything we've learned this season and head out on one last grand adventure for the very last episode of Into Swamps, Streams, and Shallows. If you liked the video, leave a like and a comment and subscribe. Stay safe, dive often, and we will see you on the next one.